All right, Wimmer. Yes, please tell us your top. You said seven. You came up with seven.
Well, I think it might actually expand into 8. So let's see how this goes.
Right.
And I'll try and do this in some sort of order. But so let's go back to first principles. So the definition of leadership is to create something that otherwise would not have been possible, right? And so and if I remember your question correctly, right, it's like skills that leaders need to acquire, or the elements of leadership, right? And so in this case, authenticity, we can start there. And so is there, in the sense of what is it, like a marketer speak? Is there a product to market match, right? Is there a product market fit? Is the person that you perceive me to be the person that I'm being internally? And at least what's interesting is that in order to work on this, it does take a level of assessment of yourself by interviewing other individuals. And then it takes a little bit of a heart-to-heart to you. And what I found in kind of going through this exercise myself when I did it a number of years ago, it was funny because the person that everybody perceived me to be was the person that I wanted to be, but I didn't think it was myself, right? And so there's a little bit of, you need to kind of check your dissonance there and do work on your dissonance. And so authenticity is one. Number 2 is alignment. And so alignment, what we talked about, and I've sprinkled some of these throughout the episode, but alignment, it really kind of works hand in hand with intention, right? And so intention is going to be the next one that I'll talk about, I hope. If you have a particular order you want me to go through here, Justin, I can. But alignment is making sure that my actions, my behaviors, my habits, because leadership, I'm not just speaking about this vocationally, right? So like there's different domains of leadership, which we haven't even gotten into. And the way I kind of look at those domains, again, I'm a great borrower of other people's works, but like, for instance, Gary Keller has a book called The One Thing. And in that, he kind of broke up domains of living, which I find aligns quite well with domains of leadership. So domains of living, his domains of living, vocation, avocation, spirituality, health, I actually have them written down here on a board, social, family, and community, right? And so, looking at those as sort of those domains, am I aligned in my goals and my actions? Am I aligning my goals with my actions, with my behaviors, with my self-talk, etc.? So that's alignment. And so if for some reason I'm not aligned in my actions, so let's say for the longest time, one of these, let me just give an example here. So health, I've mentioned as sort of core priority, core priority for who I want to be in the world, but also how I want to perform in the world, right? And so if I want to perform incredibly well in the world, and I say health is one of my core priorities, there's a misalignment when I say I say health is a core priority, and then I go out and drink a lot of alcohol, right? In general, 1 to 2 glasses, it still will affect your deep sleep. But for the longest time, I had a dissonance there. And I managed to resolve that dissonance by, through a large step down program over time. And it wasn't really, at times you probably could have called me a functioning alcoholic, but since I started focusing on health, it gradually went down and now it's 0, right? And so there is some work that needs to be done on those dissonances, and that dissonance, there can be different dissonances for different people, right? Like you may have, let's say a core value of integrity is another one. So we'll get to that here in a second. But let's say, I love my wife, but if I'm out there cheating on her every night, that's not really aligning, so well. So alignment's a good one. Commitment is another one. And so commitment is doing what it takes to ensure it gets done, right? And what I found with this in the context of leadership and leadership with teams is that there is when people work with me, they know that I am going, whatever I say I'm going to do, I'm going to get it done. And I will find a way to get it done. And if I don't find a way to get it done, I will communicate why, and I'll communicate it early. But there is a commitment there that when I also and choose to employ somebody, I am committed to making that person the best person possible, and hopefully show them something that they never thought was possible before themselves. And so there's an element of commitment there. And so how do I do work on the commitment? So if I look at my lenses of leadership on the sort of 7 different vectors that I laid out there, I have to look at them in context. It's like, okay, am I aligned? Am I committed to this spiritual element? Am I aligned? Am I committed to this social element? And I'm asking myself this at least on a once a week basis. And if for some reason I fall short, it's like, okay, where am I falling short on my commitments? And then from a practical standpoint, commitment is like, can I be relied upon? Right. And so, am I committed? And so, that's really something that, again, you can ask yourself. Let's go into integrity next. And integrity is a great buzzword, but it's a fantastic buzzword. But there's this article that I read, and there's a Harvard professor that actually wrote it. And I know I've been bashing a lot of Harvard and MIT during this podcast, but it's just interesting because he put it so simply. Integrity is your word, and that's it. And so if, and this kind of, all of these are kind of interspersed with each other, but if you are not a person that can be relied upon, then you're out of integrity. If you are saying one thing and committing yourself to one thing and not able to fall through it, you're out of integrity. And this is a gut check, right? Because don't get me wrong, in those 7 domains, like I'm still not perfect. Like there's things that I'm working on. I'm not professing here to be the reincarnation of Buddha, right? It's just like there are elements of this that I'm working on. But integrity, when you look at it from that simplistic definition of it is your word and that's it. Can you be relied upon? There's some people that are listening to this that are probably like, oh, maybe there's something I need to work on there. All right. So then we kind of move into, where do you want to go next, Jason?
Whichever you prefer. Like I got them all at a click of a button. So you let me know.
Yeah. So Justin, and I know I use the term Jason because Jason is our developer, and I was just like, okay, I need to move this meeting. But and so anyway, so let's go language. Language is interesting because language is also that whole communication element. And I think when you start to look at these, and remember the approach that we're taking from this at the outset of this podcast is not one of necessarily epistemological, right? And so we're not looking at the theory of leadership. I'm kind of looking at how to be leadership, right? And again, a lot of these are just tools and tricks that I borrowed from people over the years. And so language, your mouth is a creation whole, right? And so when you speak, something happens and it either creates or destroys whatever. And so what comes out of your mouth is ultimately a reflection of who you are inside. And so communication is essential. We all know that, right? We're listening to a leadership podcast and we all know that communication is essential. But doing the inner work, taking care of yourself, ultimately gets reflected in the language that you use in others. Let me give you an example. We all have cortisol spikes in the morning, right? Or at least those of us that have functioning adrenals have cortisol spikes in the morning. And so you also, if you're a male, you have your highest level of testosterone in the morning as well. And so, and I apologize if there's background noise. There seems to be some kids out there having a little fun. But what people don't generally realize is that there's so much out of your control. when it comes to your body. Your body runs these beautiful systems without you ever knowing about it. Like, think about cell division. Cell division happens without you knowing about it. I can guarantee right now, Justin, that you are dividing some cells. And unless you're a freak and there's something that I don't know about you, there's zero chance that you're feeling that. You're also not feeling apoptosis, which is cell death, right? And so language itself is a reflection of who you are on the inside, and what you say and what comes out of your mouth has the ability to create and produce in this world more so than almost anything else. Yes, if you're a builder, certainly that's true, but at some point you have to communicate that, whether it's written or it's no longer just throw it out into the multiverse and see what happens. That certainly may work. But usually you have marketing teams or some sort of communication behind it. So language is important. And remember, if there's some sort of mismatch between how somebody is receiving you and how, and you may not be getting what you want when you're communicating something, I find it's easiest just to take blame for it yourself, because like, clearly I am not communicating this in a way that somebody on the other end is able to understand. It's not their fault. It's me. So after language, where do we want to go? Throw me another one.
Let's go faith.
Okay, faith. This is the one where people are like, "Oh, wow, he's going there, huh?" And so, what I don't mean here is anything necessarily spiritual, but this term produces. So, faith, simply put, is the belief that there's something out there that's going to help in this matter, or there's some sort of greater thing that is going to guide you, but faith, one of the reasons why I like this as an element of leadership is because it produces a level of confidence in somebody. And when it produces a level of confidence in somebody, it also helps you be a different person and get different things out of people. And so faith, again, having faith that XYZ person is going to deliver something that is acceptable, that's delegation, right? Having faith that, the product that I've created is the best product in the world for ADHD medicine alternatives. That's faith. And therefore I'm able to produce a level of confidence that comes with it to go and talk to a doctor and say like, hey, you need to take Bluecanatine because, you need to look at Bluecanatine as an alternative for this because of this, and this reason, right? So that is faith. And if you don't have that, if you can't produce that level of confidence in yourself, either you're selling or doing the wrong thing, and you should look somewhere else, or you need to kind of do a little bit of work and understand like, okay, why is there doubt here? Why? And it's not bad if there's doubt. Like there's certain elements of those 7 areas where my faith needs work, that, my faith that I'm going to produce something like, for instance, the community, right? I live in Amsterdam. I'm not Dutch. I spend about half of my time here. And, the community element of Amsterdam is just something I haven't cracked. But there is one small inroads that I have, and it's with the entrepreneur community here in Amsterdam. And so having faith that something in that entrepreneur community, and if I just kind of keep at it with that community, it's going to blossom into something beautiful. There you go. Where are we going next, Justin?
Let's go to intention.
Okay. So intention, this is what the cool kids, this is a different word for goal setting, but also like, am I crystal clear on what I need to do and what I want to accomplish? Right. Because without that, you can be led astray, right? Like think about it. Justin, you and I have been in this entrepreneur world for quite a bit. And for a while I was in the world of creators, right? The world by which you're producing, and some, I would never have called myself an influencer, but some may have labeled me at that at some point. But you're producing content on a daily basis to hopefully make sales in the form of like an affiliate basis, right? Mm-hmm. And so In order to do that business, you have to, let's say your intention is to be somebody like Ben Greenfield. Well, I need to be crystal clear on what I want to be before I'm able to set out. Because when you're crystal clear and you have that North Star, the tasks all follow from there. One of the ways that, you and I have talked about in the past, and probably my preferred metric here is or my preferred method here, framework, because I like systems and frameworks because we fall back on our systems, right? And so, the preferred framework that I always go by is objectives and key results, right? And so that allows me to set very clear intentions, whether it be in the domain of spirituality, whether it be in the domain of community, domain of family, which in most cases usually means my relationship with Bessie. We've already disclosed her name, so I hope she doesn't mind. And then, things like health, et cetera. And so having a very clear intention allows us to get there. So I certainly, and one of the ways I do this, by the way, is also borrowed from Gary Keller, is I narrow that. So once I have my objectives and key results, I narrow it down to that one thing that I can focus on. That is usually a domino, that if I do it, several other things fall, right? And I do spend a shitload of time, not a shitload, a decent amount of time as to what the battle plan is. Even every day, I dedicate at least 15 to 30 minutes to saying, okay, what's my battle plan for today? I knew I was having this discussion with you. And so I wanted to be very intentional with showing or just kind of giving people a different perspective on leadership, because, we could have gone into a discussion today about, leadership is the ability to handle change and management is the ability to handle complexity, right? And that would have been fine, right? But I wanted to kind of share some stuff that I thought was useful for me in sort of shaping a view, right? And a view that I have of the world. And so, that planning component is certainly helpful for intention.
Amazing.
Cool. Did I cover everything?
Last one. Give me presents for Christmas.
So presents is, exactly. Presents is like those things you get at the end of the year, right? And I asked for Tickle Me Elmo, and they gave me Kermit the fucking Frog, right? And so presents, and this is something that I've overall has been my number one focus basically since 6 years ago. Because I find with presence, everything else becomes everything else becomes easier. Remember when we were talking about culture earlier? And culture is sort of the background, and the foreground of a company is the products, the executive team, et cetera. And so, in many ways, presence is the background of all of these that allows it to happen, and allows it to happen in a much more efficient way. The fact that I have sat here with you and I'm not distracted. I mean, I know that I have something coming up in the near future, but I'm not distracted. I'm having a very present-minded conversation with Justin. That conversation becomes that much better when I have a present dinner with my wife. And so my wife and I, we both work, for all intents and purposes, U.S. hours, and we live in Europe. And so the company she works for, is in California. She doesn't work fully U.S. hours, but it's something that we've learned to work into our schedule. And so how do we work presence into our relationship, our family, right? And presence looks a lot like going to dinner on Saturday night and leaving the cell phone home. And presence looks a lot like, or just turning it off, frankly. And the cool thing about the presence feedback loop is the more you do it, the more you realize how helpful it is. And what I would say is the downside of not being present the story that I have is from my finance time, right? And so my finance time, so over the course of the age of 25 to 30, 25 to 29 really is when most of this happened. I went to 40 countries in 4 years. I ate in dozens of Michelin star restaurants. I stayed in 5-star, like ridiculous hotels. And I can tell you, there's only a handful of those that I remember and experienced and really was there and enjoyed, because I was either under the table with my BlackBerry, because we had fucking BlackBerries back then, right? Or I was stressed out about getting to the next venue, or I was constantly forward thinking, right? And so I wasn't present at all. And so there's some of those countries on that list where, you know, it's funny. I went to, and I'm going to see him in 2 weeks, but I went to a friend's wedding in Slovenia, and, you know, we went and did stand-up paddleboard. This is like the first vacation that I took with Vessi, first long vacation. And I went and did stand-up paddleboarding on Lake Bled. I barely remember any of it. And like, I remember, of course, doing it and all that stuff, but I don't remember like what it was like to paddle through the water of Lake Bled. I don't remember how warm the water was. I'm pretty sure I was more worried, like, am I going to drop my BlackBerry in the water? Right. Because the BlackBerry was the dictator of all my life. And that element of presence just makes every moment that more rich. And so one of the things that we talk about in Transcriptions, and sort of the kind of tagline that we've used is democratizing enlightenment. And you can simplify enlightenment to presence, right? And you know, enlightenment is actually freedom from the illusion of the self, but a lot of what gets in our way of presence is that illusion of the self or the ego. And so, you know, a lot of the work that I've done over the past 6 years revolves around that. And, you know, presence has allowed me to have an incredibly enjoyable conversation with you today, Justin.
That's epic. I mean, the fact that you've been present for such a long time, I really appreciate it. And despite the technical difficulties, and you giving of your time. So thank you so much, Boomer. Really, really appreciate it, and have totally been present myself, you know, to a lot of what you've been saying. You've just been striking so many chords that I'm like, oh my God. So hopefully our listeners get the same thing. And yeah, appreciate you so much, my friend.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate you too, brother.